Greetings, everyone. Welcome to your favorite podcast channel, Nigeria Unfiltered. Shalom Mufoma Erode is my name. And today we're going to continue on the series, The History of Nigeria. We're looking at a very interesting topic today, which is colonialism in Africa. Before I progress, I'd like you to know that prior to the modern colonial era that we all know, the ancient Greece and the Roman Empire extended their influence in Africa, and countries in North Africa like Egypt, Tunisia had some level of enculturation by these, and it was during this period that history has it that Alexander the Great established his influence so strong in Egypt. I'd like to know that according to history, the first African country to break loose from colonial power was Egypt, and this happened in 1922. That said, according to history, colonialism in Africa was as a result of several factors. And I'd like you to know that these factors have been used to discuss reasons why the white man or the Western powers came to Africa. And there are different reasons. We have political reasons, we have economic reasons. Now, talking about economic reason, which was a major reason for colonialism, according to history, one of the reasons why the white men came to Africa was the easy access to raw materials. That said, other factors like the Industrial Revolution that erupted the Western world, France and Britain to be precise, brought about the need to sell off the excess goods that were produced, and of course a place to dump substandard goods. All these factors put together led to colonialism in Africa. Another economic factor was to get a large market space. For the political reason, it was said that colonialism also made these Western powers stronger and powerful because their colonies were seen as an extension of their military strength and base. Also, because of colonialism, the Western powers were able to institutionalize their government in their colonies. There are two types of colonies in Africa. We have the settler colony and we have the non-settler colony. I'd like you to know that most of the countries colonized by Portugal, Germany, and some of the countries colonized by France and England are settler colonies. When we say settler colonies, what are we referring to? Settler colonies are areas where the white men came for two reasons. One, for extension, influence, economic, political, and the second one was to have a place of comfort, a place to stay. Among the settler colonies, we have two of them that were more populated by the white men, and the largest of all is South Africa, followed to Algeria. History has it that South Africa gained independence first in 1910, following the unilateral declaration of independence. The white men, because of the settler mindset, did not allow the Africans in South Africa to rule or to participate in government. Not until 1994, January, when the ANC, African National Congress, fielded Nelson Mandela for the presidential election and he won on popular majority. Mind you, Mandela has spent over 22 years in prison, the first South African to rule South Africa in 1994. I'd like you to know that South Africa was colonized by the British. Algeria was the largest settler colony and they gained independence in 1962 and it was a French colony. Another settler colony was Namibia. Namibia was colonized by Germany and they gained independence very late in 1990. That said, Kenya was another French colony that gained independence in 1963. I'd like you to know that the Portuguese colonized Angola, Mozambique. Angola gained independence in 1975. Mozambique gained independence in 1975. Another settler colony was Southern Rhodesia. The word Southern Rhodesia was coined by the British capitalist Cicero, who took ownership of the Rhodesian axis, that is, the Northern Rhodesia and the Southern Rhodesia. Northern Rhodesia was a non-settler colony, and that is Zambia. Zambia gained independence in 1960. Southern Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, gained independence in 1980. In Africa, independence was delayed in the settler colony. Reasons is not far-fetched. The white men came to these territories with the intention of settling down there. North Africa were influenced by the activities of the Europeans and the Western Asian. Tunisia gained independence on the 20th of March 1956. Morocco gained independence on the 2nd of March 1956. Non-settler colonies are colonies where the white men had it planned to just come, colonize, exploit, and explore these territories. It was strictly for business, economic, and political. Modern history agrees that colonialism in Africa gained some level of organization following the Berlin Conference of December 1884 and January 1885. The Berlin Conference was organized and convened by the then German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck in an attempt to solve the crisis and the conflict, internal wrangling amongst superpowers, viz. England, France, Belgium, Italy, Portugal, Germany, Spain, Turkey. It was after the Berlin Conference, which is popularly known as the Scramble for Africa, or the partitioning or balkanization of Africa, gave African countries to the various European powers. Like I said, this non-settler colony was strictly for business. History has it that Ethiopia was the only African country recorded that was not really colonized. There's something I like to draw here. In the 15th century, Spain has already penetrated Africa. and they saw that the Canary Island was colonized. And it was as a result of this that there was a genocide among the Berber people. When grouping African countries in terms of the language of their colonial masters, there are three distinct groups. We have the Anglophone speaking countries. These are countries that colonized by the British government. They include Nigeria, Ghana, Congo Kinshasa. Let me speak briefly about the Francophone speaking countries. The principle of assimilation was the first mechanism used by the French government in administering a territory. And what does this principle suggest? It's saying that Africans need to be enculturated. That is, they need to learn the culture of the French government. They saw Africans as second-class citizens. That was what the principle of assimilation is all about. Enculturated Africans, letting them learn how to speak like the French government, behave like the French government, etc. Whilst colonialism was taking a new shape, the principle of association came in. What is this principle? This was a deeper level of integration for the colonies. The principle of association sees these colonies as extension of the French administration. That is, the colonies were also French citizens. It was under this principle that certain Africans started gaining scholarship and grants to formal education in the French country. And some beneficiaries of this scheme include Leopold Sedar Senghor, who would later become the first president of Senegal. There were other persons, and I'd like you to know, whilst the process to decolonization was easy in the French government as a result of the principle of association. That is, there was a kind of negotiation. That was the period of Traoré. In the Francophone countries, the principle of association thrived. African leaders later agitated for independence. And this was where the country called Tanganyika Republic, now known as Tanzania, became independence in 1960 under the leadership of Julius Nyerere, who brought about the Ujamaa principle. Ujamaa is more or less like socialism in Tanzania. History has it that though he had good intention for his country, he left Tanzania worse off than he met it. That is a story for another day. Also, Senegal took that line. They gained independence in 1960, and the first president of Senegal was Leopold Sedar Senghor. This is a great man who thrived in history, but in an attempt to let the white men know that Africans are people with a culture that have history, Leopold Sedar Senghor wrote about black woman, the African woman, where he described and dramatized the African culture. Now let's move to the Anglophone speaking country. Anglophone speaking countries are countries that are colonized by the British administration. Nigeria fall under the Anglophone speaking country. South Africa fall under the Anglophone speaking country. Ghana falls under the Anglophone speaking country. We also have, Congo Kinshasa. First Anglophone country that gained independence aside Egypt, because Egypt was the first African country and was colonized by the British government, and they gained independence in 1822. In modern history, the first Anglophonist colony to get independence was Ghana. Congo Kinshasa had independence in 1960, and the first president of Congo was Patrice Lumumba. History has it that he was a great man, although he was removed by the military led by Mobutu Sese Seko. That's the story for another day. Kwame Nkrumah led Ghana to independence in 1956. And history has that Kwame Nkrumah was a socialist-minded person. He actually had great intention for Africa. These were the foremost African nationalists and leaders. In fact, history has that Kwame Nkrumah alongside Muammar Gaddafi, they spearheaded USA. And what does this USA represent? United States of Africa. They wanted an Africa where we are free and totally independent from the hegemony of the white man. Coming down home to Nigeria, I'd like you to know that this series should be in two phases. So let me just start something about Nigeria. In 1885, the British government handed over the territories of Nigeria to the Royal Niger Company. The Royal Niger Company administered Nigeria. Not until 1900, the Royal Niger Company took over an ownership, economic reins of the territory known as Nigeria. In 1900, Lord Lugard officially came to Nigeria, northern Nigeria. So as at 1900, there were 3 different administrative units in Nigeria. We have the Northern Protectorate, headed and coordinated by Sir Frederick Lugard. We had the Southern Protectorate, coordinated and administered by Sir Walter Egerton. And we had the Colony of Lagos. The Colony of Lagos was directly under the monarch. It was ruled directly from Britain. I'd like to explain something quickly here. The difference between the protectorate and the colony is that the protectorate are administered by administrators, while the colonies are directly under the monarch in Britain. History has it that in 1906, Sir Walter Egerton was promoted to also administer the Colony of Lagos, and that marked a new era in Nigeria. For ease of administration and execution, the Lagos colony was amalgamated alongside Southern Protectorate, and Sir Walter Egerton became the administrator. History has it that Walter Egerton was transferred, and the reins of power, the reins of Nigeria, was solely under the administrative power of Lord Lugard. It was in 1914 that Lord Lugard amalgamated the Northern and the Southern Protectorate. And that marks a watershed in the history of Nigeria vis-a-vis colonialism. According to history, the 1914 amalgamation made the territory of Nigeria one. Are we going to say that that amalgamation was as a result of circumstances? Are we going to say it's a forced marriage? What are we going to liken it to? Bringing different tribes, different idiosyncrasy, different ideology, and ways of doing things, culture, forcefully, without seeking, their opinion, forcefully joining them together as one entity. Wow. However, we will see it as historic because Nigeria has come to leverage on our cultural diversity and ethnic plurality. That said, history has it that Lord Lugard officially brought indirect rule to the Northern Protectorate. Because of the well-organized and structured emirate system, indirect rule was recorded successful. What is indirect rule? Indirect rule simply means administration of a territory by their local leaders. Indirect rule is simply using local people to administer local government. In fact, if you want to trace the beginning of local government administration, it can be traced to indirect rule, because indirect rule was a form of local administration where persons from a particular region, locality, were selected, promoted to administer this territory. What led to the introduction of indirect rule in Nigeria, or what made Lord Lugard, representing the British government, introduce indirect rule in Nigeria? Several reasons can adduce to that. Chief amongst them was the recorded success of indirect rule in other British colonies, viz. Uganda. Indirect rule was successful in Uganda. Also, indirect rule was successful in India. Not until 1947, when the Indian government led by Mahatma Gandhi, through a non-violent civil disobedience, gained independence. Indirect rule was what was on operation there. 2 years later in Nigeria, indirect rule was introduced in the Western region. The Western region accepted indirect rule as a result of their structured and style of administration. It was the native ordinance that brought about the introduction of indirect rule in the Western region. History has it that it recorded a quasi-success. Quasi here has to do with partially successful, because of the palace structure of the Yorubas, the Western region. It was very difficult for indirect rule to penetrate the Eastern region, owing to the fact that Eastern Nigeria, dominated by the Igbos, is an acephalous society, Acephalous means a decentralized local democracy. There were no central leader per se to take ownership of that region. And this was what brought about the introduction of warrantship in 1928, as soon as the British government introduced indirect rule there. History has it that indirect rule was totally unsuccessful. It was an abysmal failure. A year later, 1929, the Umuada group, a group of first daughters, staged a protest in Aba, popularly known as the Aba Women Riots. I'd like to end here today. In our next series, we will be looking at the different administrators, their impacts to the development constitutionally of Nigeria. I remain Shalom Ufoma Irude. Do well to engage, subscribe, and promote this channel, Nigeria Unfiltered Podcast.